You've been referred to as the Dando investor, and I've got a book here which you wrote called The Dando Investor. What does this word Dando mean, and why do they call you the Dando Investor?
Dhandho is actually a word from Gujarat, which is on the western coast of India, where Gandhi came from. They're extremely astute business people. And Dhandho, if you translate it directly in Gujarati, it means business. But it doesn't really mean business. What it means is it's a way of doing business where the downside is non-existent. We already discussed how Mr. Branson is a Dhandho investor. He had no downside. Mr. Gates was a Dhandho investor. He had no downside. Mr. Walton was a Dhandho investor. They had no downside. So all of these people embarked on businesses, built huge fortunes without taking risk. And so the Dhandho investor was written from the perspective of how can we minimize risk while keeping the returns intact.
You use this example of the Patels.
Mm-hmm.
What is that story?
The Patels went to Uganda more than 100 years ago, maybe close to 130 years ago.
It was a family?
It's an ethnic group in India. And so this ethnic group came to Uganda to build the railroad. But they're very savvy business people. And over the course of the last 100-odd years, when they were in Uganda, through their Dhandho methods of doing business, they became very successful entrepreneurs, and they controlled large parts of the Ugandan economy. And Idi Amin came to power in Uganda in the 1970s. And he said, Africa is for Africans. So what he did is he threw all the Patels out and he nationalized all their assets. So now the Patels were stateless. The US took them in, the UK took them in, Canada took some of them in. And when they landed in the US, they basically really didn't have any skills that would allow them to get good jobs, white-collar jobs in the US. And what a few of them started to do was they realized that if they bought a motel, a small 10 or 20-room motel, the family could live in one or two of the rooms, and they could use the money they got out and get a bank loan and run the motel. Now, motels are very labor-intensive businesses. So what they did is when a Patel took over a motel, they fired all the staff. And the family took over all the jobs, the cleaning and front desk and everything else, right? And the Patels are vegetarians, and they live a very simple life. So when a Patel took over a motel in an area, what they were able to do is they were able to undercut the prices of all the other motels in the area because they have no labor. They have no payroll. They have no workers' comp, none of those things. And so if everyone else is charging $25 a night, they're charging, $19 a night. So the occupancy was higher than everyone else. And they saved their money. And then what they would do is buy the next motel, send the nephew to run it, and then buy the next motel. And this started happening in the early 70s. And when you fast forward to today, 80% of all the motels in the US are under Patel ownership. 80%. So the Patels make up 0.1% of the US population. Indians make up about little over 1%, maybe 1.2, 1.3%. Just 1/10 of that is the Patels. And this 0.1% population is controlling 80% of the motels in the country. And it's because of the Dhandho way.
So if I want to steal from the Dando way, you told me it's good to be a copier. What are the principles of the Dando way that I need to be thinking about? Because I think was there 9? Yeah, there was 9 principles in total in the book.
Well, the most important one is heads I win, tails I don't lose much. Everything we discussed today, Stephen, is heads I win, tails I don't lose much. When I started my business, when Bill Gates started, when Sam Walton started, and when Richard Branson started, that was the formula. If they won, they would win big. And if they lost, they'd lose nothing. So everything has to be in business about risk reduction. Everything has to be about free lunches. We love free lunches. Okay, so we always have to think about how do we get this done without capital, without risk, free lunches.
Do you think there's an opportunity for people? Because everybody's at the moment thinking about AI and technology and these like really advanced new innovations as an opportunity. But does that create an opportunity in the boring, in the motel, in the laundry mat?
Yeah, so, the reality is, so entrepreneurship is not studied much in business schools because there's nobody going to give you a consulting project for studying entrepreneurs. If we really study startups in the US or actually anywhere in the world, 99.99% of startups are non-venture backed.
What does that mean?
What I mean by that is those are your laundromat, your Chinese restaurant, your, eBay seller, whatever, Amazon seller, so on, right? The small businesses. None of those companies were formed because of venture capital. So the media focuses on all the venture capital-led businesses. And so people think that, if I have to do a startup, I got to do something in technology. Well, that's like 1/10 of 1% or less. You can ignore it. You don't need to really worry about it. The important thing is to be an observer and to look at what my dad would call offering gaps. So let me explain an offering gap, right? So let's say there's a town, let's call it Town A. Town A, there's a barber shop in Town A. Okay, and the barber's one of many barbers doing well, etc. There's another town about 30 miles away, Town B, which also has barbers. They're also doing fine. There's a new township coming up in the middle of these two towns called Town C. Town C doesn't have much of a population, but it's growing fast. So the barber in Town A goes to see what all the hoopla about Town C is all about. So he takes a trip there, sees that there's some increase in population, people are moving in, and he notices there's no barbershops. Why would there be any barbershops? Because it's brand new, right? So he's thinking, how do I do this without taking risk? And what he does is he rents subleases a small storefront, buys some used barber equipment, and then decides that one day a week he's going to go into that town and cut hair every Wednesday. And he puts up a note board saying, I'm available Wednesdays. And what happens is people start coming in. They come in because they have no choice. If you don't go to this barber, you got to spend half an hour driving to one of the other two towns. Now, he normally charges $30 for a haircut. But here, he doesn't need to charge 30 because there's an opportunity cost of the time you're saving. So he can charge 45. So he's charging 45 over here, and then when he's in his own town, he's charging 30. Now what he notices is Wednesdays are filled up. So he says Tuesday and Wednesday. Okay, and gradually what ends up happening is that business is full-time and he's making $45 an hour per haircut. Mm-hmm. But the nature of capitalism is more barbers are going to show up. So the second barber comes in, the third barber comes in. Eventually, the haircut there is going to be $30. It's going to neutralize. But in the meanwhile, he's doubled his business, right? What risk did he take? So going into Town C was addressing an opportunity gap. When Howard Schultz started Starbucks, he saw an offering gap. He thought that what Italians love about cafes might be what Americans love too. Didn't exist, right? And he went and did it.
You know that barber that moves into Town C first, and they're really having a great time because there's no competition. One of your points when you're talking about the Dando method is this idea of creating a durable moat. It's point 4 of the 9.
So sometimes what happens is that you start a business. Every business starts off without a moat.
What is a moat?
We have a castle, a knight in charge of the castle to keep the invaders away. And one of the ways to keep the invaders away is you put a moat of water around the castle. So when you put a moat of water around the castle, it makes it harder for anyone to take the castle. And a business with a moat around it is a business that competitors will have a difficult time taking business away from. So what can happen with our barber in Town C? Humans are creatures of habits. We don't like to change our barber every month. We like the same barber. So if he's competent and good, what's going to end up happening is that his client base will stay with him.
What about loyalty points? I was just struck the other day when I was shopping in LA at Erewhon, which is a supermarket here in LA. And someone had recommended it to me on the plane, which actually goes to your point about actually give a great product. Because an airline hostess on my flight over here went, "Oh, you're on keto diet. You need to go check out Erewhon." So that's the recommendation.
And that's 10x more powerful than any ad or anything else they could run.
And I went there.
Yeah.
When I landed, because I needed a supermarket and didn't know the place. But then interestingly, when I was at the checkout yesterday, after my second visit, the lady at the checkout goes, "Hey, are you an Erewhon member?" And I was like, "Erewhon member?" And she was, it does cost. She was honest. She went, "It costs money, but here's what you get." She goes, "On this order today, you would have got 10% off this entire order." It's expensive, Erewhon. And she goes, "And we give you a drink every month." She listed all the things off. I signed up and bought the membership to Erewhon. I tell you now, I'm not going anywhere else. I don't know what it is, but now that I'm a member and I have the app, I'm not going anywhere else.
Well, that's the hack that Amazon did, right, with Prime. And 2 or 3 years ago, I was seated at dinner next to Bill Gates. You know, my middle name is Forrest Gump. These things happen once in a while. And Bill is describing to me how the business model of Costco and the business model of Amazon is illegal. Okay, so I said, "Why is it illegal?" He said, when you put a membership fee, what you're doing to the consumer is you're locking them in, which means the consumer is no longer going after the lowest price because there's a distortion in their behavior.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the FTC doesn't believe it's illegal, but Bill Gates does. And I was just thinking, well, that's because you're competitive with Amazon, you know?
Yeah. That Prime thing with Amazon is super smart.
Yeah, and that was taken from Costco.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
But basically, the lock-in is very powerful.
One company I wanted to talk to you about was Apple. Because Apple, I find, is a really interesting company. You talked about being a copycat, kind of arriving later to the party with new things. They've kind of been a story of both sides of the equation. They've been innovative, it seems, especially under Steve Jobs. And more recently, I mean, they were like copying other people, but now I'm not even sure what they are.
Well, so Apple is a very unusual company in that everything emanated from one guy. Okay. And that one guy has been gone for a long time. And if you look at Apple, basically nothing new has come out since he left. We don't have a Steve Jobs at Apple. And the same thing happened at Disney. You know, they had to buy Pixar because there was no Disney anymore. Mr. Disney was gone. And so Apple actually, I find somewhat risky.
As an investment?
Yes, because if the form factor, so currently humans walk around with a brick in their pockets or in their hands. At some point, that form factor is going to change. It may be integrated into something we wear or some other more ergonomic situation. That may or may not be Apple. And in fact, more likely not to be Apple. It's probably some guy in a garage somewhere. And so if they are smart enough to find the guy in the garage early enough and buy them, they're okay. And bring them in as the next Steve Jobs, that's okay. But even there, the odds are low.
What does this say to you about founders? The specialness of founders. Are they a unique animal? Or can you swap them out and still be tremendously successful?
Well, I would say that there are a lot of elements of luck. So first of all, founders are all great at what I call offering gaps, right? They find something that the world doesn't have, that needs, etc., and they go after it. Sometimes what happens with the offering gaps is a moat gets built, right? Someone starts Visa, it becomes a moat company or American Express and so on. And it perseveres and scales.
Like Apple with their ecosystem, their closed ecosystem.
But 100% of businesses eventually will go to zero. And so it very well could be that a business could last for 50, 100, 200 years, 150 years, could last well past the founder's lifetime. Those are businesses which were built with a lot of principles and a lot of great core values. You know, the founder of IKEA, every decision he took was with a 500-year view. How many businesses think with a 500-year view? And IKEA, you know, I was studying IKEA, some very remarkable things about it. First of all, he never ever took debt. Every single store they built out of retained earnings and cash. He never took debt. And I've studied business failure quite a bit. The single biggest reason why businesses fail is leverage. They owe people money and they can't pay it back and that they're gone. So IKEA has never taken debt. If you never take debt as a retailer, you're going to grow slower, right? You got to keep kind of bringing in the cash. But it's a very solid foundation because it's on a rock solid balance sheet and such. And his second principle was no two IKEA stores can be the same. So what he said is that whenever we are opening a new IKEA store, there has to be some innovation that is going into that store that does not exist in our previous stores. Because he says that if I don't keep innovating, I'm done. And so if we don't notice it, because we think all the IKEAs are the same. But actually, if you study them and look at when they were built, etc., you start seeing these incremental changes that they're making.
That's a really interesting idea that I could implement into everything that I do, which is just making sure that every podcast I do, there's one new experiment or innovation, or every piece of work you do, whatever team you're in, is just to run out one experiment in every.
Absolutely.
But you have to make it measurable, right? Or else it's not a experiment. So you also talk about making fewer big infrequent bets.
Yes.
Who's that relevant for, and in what context?
So one of the things that Warren Buffett says, he says that you get a punch card which you can punch 20 times in your lifetime. And each time you buy a stock, it's one punch that's gone. So what Warren is saying is, if there was a rule which said that you cannot buy more than 20 stocks in your whole life, what would happen is you would be very thoughtful about what you bought. Okay, and chances are those decisions might be good decisions because you only have 19 left, and then you only have 18 left, etc. So in venture investing, a very small sliver of companies that venture capitalists invest in do well, right? The high high burnout rate. And if we look at the stock market, 4% of listed companies generate 90% of the return. So most companies that we may think about investing in are likely not to do well for us. It's a 96% odds. That's why the index is so important, is when you buy the index, you bought that 4%. And if you go pick stocks, you have 1 in 25 chance of getting one of those 4%.
You said earlier the punch card analogy of 20 things in the punch card. You've got to pick 20 in your life. If you only had 3 to 5 things that you would bet or back now, which I think is actually kind of what you do, what would those things be?
Well, I mean, so I'm trying to resist going to specific names.
Yeah.
Because I think that would hurt people more than help people.
Okay, that's fair.
What I would prefer that people do is focus on the other 2 variables, which is the amount you're saving and the length of the runway, and focus on the index. So I think that it's kind of like saying, I want to be a great AI developer, because it's the way to be. Well, to be a great AI developer is going to take time.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.